Chairman, we've had apologies for absence from councillors Pighills and Harborough, and that's it. Thank you.
Right, thank you very much.
May I take the roll call?
Absolutely.
Thank you. So members, you know how it goes. So we'll start with you, Councillor Staveley, you're here.
Present.
Councillor Brockbank.
Here.
Thank you. Councillor Brown.
Here.
Councillor Hull.
Present.
Great, thank you. Councillor Jacquin.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Mercer.
Here.
Thank you. Councillor Morby.
Here.
Councillor Shuttleworth.
Present.
Councillor Soloway.
I'm here.
And Councillor Sutcliffe.
Here.
Thank you very much. And that's it, Chair. Thank you.
Right, thank you. Minutes of the meeting held on 15th of January 2020. Seems like so long ago now. To confirm, have I got proposer and a seconder? Right, I've got Andy Soloway, Councillor Soloway proposing, Councillor Morby seconding. That's okay, gentlemen. Thank you. Item 4, declarations of interest, members. If anybody's got any declarations, raise your virtual hand, please. No, you're looking suitably disinterested. That'll do. Right then. So, I don't know how we're going to do. Paul's talking about absence management, but we can't really quit from one meeting to the other, can we?
No, Chair. I mean, this is the Select Crime and Disorder Committee meeting. The Select Committee meeting is a separate meeting. It's taking place after this one, really. I mean, you can move the items around of the Crime and Disorder Committee meeting, but you can't really introduce one item from one committee into another one.
Would you like to start with Community Safety Hub report, Chair?
May as well fire away, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Stacey.
I mean, it's not going to take long anyway, but obviously there's the report for September, which again has background to say that North Yorkshire remains one of the safest places in England. The figures are there under section 2. Again, just a little snippet of what the North Yorkshire Community Safety Partnership are currently doing, and there's lots of activity around that at the moment, around governance and who actually sits at that meeting. And then obviously there's the update to say what staffing levels are at the moment, and I'm pleased to say that we've got a new PCSO that's joining PC Tidmarsh, dealing with mental health and crisis cases, because not just due to the lockdown, but obviously we've had there's a lot of people out there with mental health issues, and so we've got 2 officers who spend the majority of their time in that role now. I think I've said everything really that needs to be said on staffing levels. So we're in a really good place at the moment, and that's all down to Lorraine pushing for the officers to sit within the hub. And yeah, we're doing really well at the moment. Where else are we? Tactical group, the internal one, obviously with lockdown, we haven't been able to really formulate that how we would have liked. However, I am working closely with other officers within the office. When I pop in, I try and get in twice a week into the office, but we work closely anyway. We just haven't been able to meet as a group. Key performance markers are all on there, and again, despite lockdown, we're busier than ever really. And really my main purpose, my main focus for this evening was the proposal to extend the public space protection order for the Town Hall car park. And there's some figures in Appendix B, I think it was down as, which is really my annual review and the proposed extension. So although the order does run till the 15th of November, obviously we won't have a meeting till after that date, and I just wanted to know that if members agreed it in principle, then all the work that I have to do with the consultation, I can go ahead with, basically.
Right. Well, initially I've got, looks like questions from Councillor Shuttleworth and Councillor Morby. So Councillor Shuttleworth first, please, if you would.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I'm sorry, I was just a bit confused at the start there when we were commenting on the minutes for report in reference to our exchange of emails a day or two ago. I wish to raise something about the road safety overview. I actually thought we were accepting minutes for the select committee meeting and not crime and disorder. Anyway, that's my mistake.
Okay.
Yeah, I've asked Hannah, have we had any response to the resolutions A, B and C on item OS 440? And apparently we haven't, which quite frankly, I find, well, to put it politely, extremely disappointing. Saying it's 6 months since these resolutions and presumably the action was taken, and we haven't had a dicky bird back.
I have actually contacted Fiona and Councillor Mackenzie myself, and Councillor Mackenzie assures me he's having a very nice holiday in Norfolk. So that'll be tickety boo for him. But he's going to get back to Fiona. He just seemed to be somewhat unaware of our requests. So that's a little bit concerning. But he has promised to look at that. So it might be something that he comes back to us and his information comes forward. I think we can get that forwarded to members. We don't need to wait for the next crime and disorder meeting to sort of get back their response. So if that's okay with you, Councillor Shuttleworth.
Yeah, can I propose then that we send, well, a politely but sharp reminder to ask for a response for these.
Already done.
Already done.
I've
Right.
done it myself. That's when he came back to me and said he was on holiday this week. As I say, I got in touch with both himself and Fiona. Ansel, who was the officer that came. So we'll be getting back in touch, I hope.
With respect, Chair, does in touch mean in writing?
Email.
Email. So we have a record.
Yes, oh yeah, it's all on the record, and Guy and Hannah have been copied into that email chain as I've replied once I got an answer from them. So there's no real excuse for them not to deal with that. So we'll look forward to hearing from them. Councillor, is that everything? Councillor Morby, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm just reading this, and it says here we are currently advertising for a PC to support the PCSO role of child sexual exploitation, child criminal exploitation. I can see you're advertising for a PC, but what does concern me is the increase in this workload. Is this due to the lockdown, or it is concerning me?
Yeah, Lorraine's going to answer that.
Went out. We have a person in post called PC Andy McClurg. He started last week. Some of the increase is because of the self-generation, because we've actually started to put somebody in position, which is Emily Hewitson, who does a fantastic job, and the schools have been really on board with it. A lot of the partner feedback that came back positive around the Community Safety Hub was because of the work that we're doing in CSE and CCE, and it's because we finally put some resource in there. If anything, with Andy in position, I expect that to increase. I think when you look for it, you find it. And because of the vulnerable nature of the children that we're dealing with, they're not necessarily going to come to services without support. So it's absolutely concerning. I don't think it'll decrease, but actually there's some reassurance by the fact it's going up because we're finding out about it and we're getting some really good results on the back of it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Morby. Councillor Hull, please. Like to unmute yourself.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm just wondering, in light of the Prime Minister's announcements this evening, if perhaps address my question first of all to Inspector, he made a big point of saying that they were definitely listening to the police. And I was just wondering, in the context of the community hub, whether that's been your experience and whether there's bits and that have been misinterpreted or not understood. And linking it to what Stacey was talking about with the importance of the recruitment of the new PCSO, whether you feel, particularly in the light of now having to prosecute, as it were, people are going to be fined for breaches of the 6 group clusters, whether that's going to put an extra load which might detract from some of this important work you're doing really close to the communities.
Up until to date, the resources that have enforced COVID legislation have been separate from the Community Safety Hub. So the resources that we have in the Community Safety Hub, such as the PC and the PCSO, are ring-fenced. They don't go out and enforce COVID legislation. They haven't to date, and I don't expect that to be the case going forward. In terms of the legislation that's been announced today, we have to interpret that, and it will take some time for the College of Policing to send us some guidance out. We'll have to have it by the beginning of next week, but it's far too early for me to comment in terms of what that actually means with clarity. I mean, I'm in a household of 5, so 1 extra person means both grandparents can't come over, and I need my mum to support with childcare. So absolutely, it's another change that we're going to have to adapt to. I have included in the report that I sent through the tickets that we've issued. That's obviously been publicly announced. So up to date, we issued 198 tickets in terms of enforcing the legislation. Craven was the 2nd highest to memory, other than Scarborough. There's an expectation from the public that absolutely will enforce it, and we'll have to interpret something that was only announced an hour or 2 ago, and work out how we manage that going forward. But that has to date come from neighbourhood policing teams and response teams, not the Community Safety Hub.
Thank you for the full answer there. Thank you.
No problem. Any more questions, members, on this Community Safety Hub matter? Going to the issue surrounding the order, the community.
PSPO.
That's the one. Yeah, I was tipping my tongue clearly. Yes, I'll be interested to hear what the Skipton members, the view that we have here, have got to say about that, because obviously they're at the coalface, so to speak, and I would be intrigued to hear what they've got to say. Councillor Soloway and then Councillor Jackwin, if you wouldn't mind awfully.
Of course, Chairman. I mean, it seems to me that the Public Spaces Protection Order has been a success in that particular area, in that particular location. So my own view is that we should continue it, and we need to give enough powers to stop this kind of antisocial behaviour from happening. And it has been a success. It has stopped, cut down quite a lot. Sometimes you see cars meeting up there. In a way, it started increasing because of lockdown, because there were certain rules that people could meet up, but they were meeting up in cars. So in some ways, you might find a contradiction that actually, with the new guidance coming through, that people that might be a way of people meeting up, and that would need be dealing with. So I do support continuing it. From what I've witnessed, it's been a success. I have no problem with it. It would be good if we could extend it to other areas, and if there's a problem in other areas, I have no problem with carrying it on.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Jackwin,
I've had no complaints from adjacent residents. But just reading the report that the 14 warning letters were sent out to registered keepers. Interested to learn whether those were residents of town or coming from beyond Skipton.
Yeah, I can answer that. The majority were from Skipton, with, if I remember rightly, 5 or 6 coming from neighbouring villages. And 2 of them actually went to the same household, but to 2 individuals, 2 separate individuals.
Thank you for the update.
No problem.
So chavs don't live share. Fair enough. We learned something new tonight.
Thank you.
Guy, do I assume that we need to make a proposal for this and take a vote, or can we just take it as read that there's a support within the room?
Yeah, I think yeah, I mean, I think the report is mainly just for noting. So if members are happy, I think unless there's any objection to it, I think we would probably just move on. Yeah.
The report.
Yeah, Councillor Soloway, your hands up.
Just wanted to ask how flexible this is. I'm just coming back to the point I made that with restrictions on people meeting up, we might find that we've got the restriction on this particular area that moves the problem to somewhere else. People still manage to get around it. We'll suddenly find that they're on Oak Street car park, or on Whitefriars car park, or they're in Ingleton Community Centre car park. Have we got that kind of flexibility to bring? I'm just thinking at the moment with this current pandemic, I've noticed cars meeting up much more during lockdown in other places.
So in answer to that, Councillor Soloway, so we found that the first order we had that was on Coach Street, that was for another very similar types of incidents, but they were a different cohort, and they were actually coming from over the border, the majority of them. So that order didn't displace it then to the Town Hall car park. The Town Hall car park was simply one that's been used for generations, really, and you tend to find that it's brothers and sisters that, you know, they move on, and then the younger cohort move in, so to speak. Each location would need a separate order, so the consultation needed for each order would have to be done. That's quite a lengthy process. And the other point I wanted to make, specifically about the Town Hall car park, certainly the one resident who owns a business as well in that vicinity has been filming the vehicles, and this is another thing that we can't address with the order. But obviously there's many people that use Rectory Lane and then coming down the Bailey and then back through the car park. They're using it as a bit of a timed lap, if you like. And obviously the fourth section 59s that were issued by North Yorkshire Police only this summer have stopped that from happening, or appear to have stopped that from happening, because a section 59 very much restricts that individual, and if they're found sort of misusing the road, again, they could potentially have the vehicle taken off them. So that is a really good thing to have happened. So that the location seems to be because of those time lapse that they were doing.
Right. So I think probably the best way forward is if any members have got an objection to this scheme being extended, please make yourselves known. No.
No objection. Just interested to learn whether all the lighting in High Street car park is working, because before the next meeting we're going to get the lights, the evenings drawing in and getting darker earlier.
I suspect that might be a question for asset management, but anyway.
Well, can it be taken from this committee asking the question?
By all means, Councillor Jackwin, I believe that we could probably. Is it your ward?
Yes.
Car?
No, North Town Hall car park is not. My ward starts at Rectory Lane, just outside.
Right. Guy, do you think we could ping something across to asset management just to say the issue's been raised about the lights in the car park?
Yeah, and if we could make a note in the minutes, Hannah, and we can pick it up from there. Then we have a record of it as well, don't we?
Yeah.
Thank you, team.
No problem at all. Right, so yeah, I think that's fair to say, Stacey, that the general consensus there that we're in agreement.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, again, like I said, it doesn't run out till November, and I've obviously got work. I'll be guided by legal. They have looked at it and made the amendments needed for this report, but I'm pretty sure that that can be done. And if it's agreed in principle, then I don't see why that won't go ahead now. So thank you for that. Thank you for the support.
Chairman, do you want a proposal from this meeting?
I don't think we need a proposal as such. We've sort of, that's what I was just asking Guy before, Councillor Jack.
Okay, right.
So we should be all right, but thank you. Right, seeing as we've got a fully functioning Inspector Lorraine Croxton-Smith, it would be nice to get back on track with the agenda. Perhaps.
My apologies. It's like fate is not wanting me to make this meeting. There's been that many barriers. Anyway, I live very close by, so I've run down the hill.
You're not getting away from that easily.
Believe me, I've made every effort. It would
And
have been
it's much appreciated. It really is. It really is. There's no show without punch, like I said. But anyway, it's all right. So, over to you.
Right, okay. Obviously, I produced a report and I believe that you wanted an update in respect of rural crime. I'm hoping members have had a chance because there is a lot of good work, certainly from Watchdale, Rural Watch themselves. You'll be able to look at the news links, the successes we've had. I really fundamentally believe the rural watches have made a significant difference to our ability to police our rural communities. Last year we got hit so hard in terms of quad bike thefts, burglaries. This has massively improved our communication and our eyes and ears on the ground. We are so reliant because of the geography of the police that we've got these fantastic groups. There's 3 of them now. The most well established is Wharfdale Rural Watch. We've got radios, dash cams. We've got the WhatsApp group, which I regularly get pinged on through my phone. So there's that regular communication. Settle is again the next, not quite as advanced, but they are linked in through WhatsApp. The least and the one under most development is South Craven. We are also linked into Operation Checkpoint, which is the one we do regionally. I can't tell you the date because I wouldn't want that to be published when that'll be, but we do that on at least a twice yearly basis where every single force is involved and all our rural watches are involved. And again, it's just to send that message that actually we are policing, we are here, go away, please. And we've had some arrests on the back of it in terms of what's been produced. I don't know if members have questions now around the rural crime, or you just want me to go through the report and then pick up any questions at the end?
Members, if you've got anything immediately on this item, anybody picking up on this? I mean, I can only speak from my own experience about the Settle Rural Watch. There were some very motivated individuals who are doing a fine job. I know the term vigilante gets thrown about a bit, which tends to upset people quite a lot, and it's probably vastly unfair. We're just very concerned citizens who are giving their time freely, so I think all credit to them. As you say, it's been a good initiative that clearly is spreading throughout Craven. Soon we'll be able to build a wall around Craven and we'll have all that problem solved. Anyway, so on to the next stage, next item, if that's okay, Lorraine.
They really are passionate. We have people going out sometimes every single night. They absolutely do a sterling job. So moving on, I've included the stuff we've done around what we call Operation Tala, which is the response to the coronavirus. As I mentioned before, we have issued a number of tickets. That was in the media. There was some analysis around the BAME community and whether there was any disproportionality. Yes, we have issued tickets to people from outside of North Yorkshire. I think the expectation is we would because they're travelling within. Perhaps there's some work that we need to consider, and that is under consideration about should we have collated the number of people that we actually engaged, explained and educated, because actually enforcement was the last option of the 4 and we did an awful lot of the other 3. So the figures only relate to those that were right at the other end of that spectrum, and actually had we been able to show all the other 3 steps, that would hopefully have painted a much fuller picture around that. We've also started doing a problem solving plan at a community level with Wharfdale, looking at the impact on our beauty spots, which has been significant. We've done a survey, and I think we had 106 responses from parish councils, from community members wanting to know what the issues were. A lot of that came back around littering, antisocial behaviour, parking. We've obviously got issues with access to roads that we've been picking up, and there's some short-term and longer-term actions on the back of that. That is an ongoing piece of work. One of the first things that we have done is, again, set up a WhatsApp group. We were already involved with that with the park rangers. Again, eyes and ears, trying to be proactive in respect of knowing where there's lots of people, where issues are building up before they become a significant problem, where such as we can't get emergency service vehicles through. So that has, in my mind, been a fantastic step, but that is a longer term piece of work. Any problem solving plan, that can be, I mean, you can have short term ones, which might be only 3 months, or it can be 2 to 3 years worth of work. There's quite a significant piece of work to do with highways. which we know when it comes to getting.
Oh, hello. Hold on, Lorraine, you've gone muted for some reason.
Right, so okay, so we've got some work to do with highways, with double yellow lines. That doesn't happen overnight. So there's various stages. Paul Evans, the sergeant, is leading on that piece of work. He comes back from leave this week, and the next meeting we'll need setting up as a result of it. I've no doubt we will have the continued issues with beauty spots, and it seems really timely that we deal with it now, whilst it's such a prevalent issue and causing a lot of concern. So that's the piece of work we've been on with. I can hear you drawing breath. Was that a question?
Well, yeah, I was just going to say, I've got Councillor Hull with a raised hand, which I suspect she might have just thrown in before we started the Optala item. And then I've got Councillor Brown as well. So it's okay, Lorraine. We'll just take a pause and take the councillors' questions. Councillor Hull first, please.
Well, actually, I anticipated the next one, which is the general crime figures. So I'm having to wait till the inspector's gone through those. So I'm on page.
All right, no problem.
Yeah.
So we'll keep it powder dry. Councillor Brown.
I made the same mistake.
Oh,
Come on, concentrate for goodness sake. You wait all 6 months or more for one of these meetings and then drop the ball. Good grief. Councillor Solomon, now this is definitely a question, is it, Councillor Soloway? Right, unmute yourself.
It's a question and a mix of a statement. One of the things that I throughout this coronavirus pandemic, I've had the most amazing admiration for the police and what I think is actually almost an impossible job they've had to do. They've had to basically try and enforce and against illegal gatherings and against people coming in and just depending on the place, because they haven't really had the backing nationally. That's my own view. You may share this, may not, but I just want to pass on my absolute appreciation for the work that the police have done throughout this pandemic, the risks that they have put themselves into, not just in Craven, but nationally. I mean, having to deal with breaking up illegal raves and things puts those frontline officers in the front line of catching the virus. So I really want to commend our local police force and the police forces nationally, because they've almost been put in a really impossible situation by not actually being given that many powers to actually to deal with the problem. And now we've got another directive that's coming that they've now got to deal with, and I wish you all the best for dealing with it. And I really hope that national government give you some backup behind it. Really do.
Okay. I've got Councillor Brockbank next.
Thank you, Councillor Soloway.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, it's just to say it's probably it's more of a general thing, really, rather than the Community Safety Partnership report that comes next. But just to say that we have our Public Safety Community Officer. I don't know if I've got that all in the right order. Craig, and he represents the 3 blue light services, and he has been absolutely fantastic. He's engaging with the community. He came to the Bentham Parish Council meeting last night. He comes into the food bank. He's been really proactive, and we're so pleased to have him, and he's doing a fantastic job. That's all I wanted to say.
You're okay there, Councillor Brock. You're muted for a moment there. Have you finished? Yeah, right. Yeah, I mean, clearly the issue that's raised about the beauty spots in the area being blighted by unwanted levels of traffic. It's ironic that it's taken coronavirus for this to actually sort of become an issue that's actually looking to be dealt with, because clearly throughout Craven there's many places, certainly in my neck of the woods, villages like Horton, beauty spots like Stainforth Foss and so on, that have been troubled for quite some time by visitors. So good luck with trying to get the yellow lines where you need them. I think, to be honest, North Yorkshire highways, when it comes to putting yellow lines, are not the most agile, shall we say, in responding to community need. But nonetheless, as I say, coronavirus does seem to have sharpened minds in some areas. And yes, of course, I'll echo Councillor Holloway's remarks to say good luck. I think you'll need it. Right, so Lorraine, if you'd like to carry on with your general crime figures, please.
If I could just for a minute, Councillor Brockbank, could I ask that you put that in a paragraph if possible? Because I know the work of Craig's doing and it will be subject to an evaluation. It'd be really useful to get that documented so that we could feed that back. And I'm sure it'd be really reassuring for him as well that he's making the impact that we hoped, and that would be much appreciated.
Yes, yeah, would you like me to send that to the chair or of the committee, or would you like that recording in the minutes of this committee?
Entirely which works best. Either you can send it through me or we can record it in the minutes and I can forward them on. It's just to have that recognised if possible.
Can I ask if any other members have dealt with Craig at all? Have we got any other members that have had experience of his work? No.
I suggest possibly not. It is meant to be very locality based at Bentham, recognising Bentham itself has some antisocial behaviour. It doesn't have a direct police resource located in that area at the moment, or hasn't to date, and we were hoping that the presence of Craig would make that impact, which so I wouldn't expect it to be beyond that sort of geographic location.
No, I mean, clearly Bentham needs help. But anyway, right, next. Next item.
Okay, before I move to crime figures, because I know I'll probably get questions on the back, I did just briefly wanted to mention, because I haven't put it in the report, that we are doing Project Servitor training for Craven officers, which is, in theory, a way of working. It was introduced in the Metropolitan Force in the City of London around hostile reconnaissance, terrorism, but it's also used as a general crime tool. It's meant to detect people that are up to no good. So something like drug dealing, traffic, immigration, all sorts of things. So we are looking to bring that. There's some training starting next month for both neighbourhood policing team and response colleagues. It is a very highly visible tool. We will be going out to do some public engagement with businesses, because the idea is not just as public resource there in terms of the police, but actually all the businesses, the locality, having eyes and ears and watchful eyes, waiting to see what's coming next, and that we are really vigilant around what happens. So there'll be a number of sites across Craven there being scoped out at the minute. I think it's a really good thing for Craven. We've got it over at Harrogate, over at York. We use it at major events. If you think about the number of events we run at Skipton, or whether that's up at Grassington, it's a tactic and a tool that we can use where there's a number of officers, a serial, it can be as low as 2, 3 or 4 in plain clothes and uniform. We can do vehicle stops. And it's engaging people and being really intrusive around why are people here, and it's looking at behavioural cues. There's quite a lot of training. It's paid for by the Home Office, but I for one am really keen that it comes to Craven, because I think we've been sort of missed out a little bit, but that should start coming through within the next few months.
Picking
I
up
can
on
send some information through if you like, and give you a hyperlink and share some information if you'd like it.
Yeah, just picking up a point that was mentioned earlier about the issues of child grooming. Do I take it that this sort of initiative would help to recognise some of that? Because that seems to be something that's milling around in the background, particularly in South Craven, that we never seem to have completely ridded ourselves of. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, although actually I would say CSE is all over North and South Craven. The idea behind it is that anybody who starts to see a police resource, which is why we do plainclothes as well, because we want to catch them when they're in our circle and we've dominated an area, is that when people are vigilant, surveillance conscious, whether that's shoplifters, CSE traffickers, then they usually turn and walk away from us, don't they? Or they change behaviour. So the idea is that we should detect people who are up to no good. And having been on the course as a DTAC commander, when you're not being truthful, you change, you become really conscious, and it's really hard to be normal. So it can be all sorts of things. Like I said, it's generally been brought into city centres for terrorism-related purposes, but anybody that, like I said, is surveillance conscious or doesn't want to be detected should, in theory, be detected by these tactics.
Thank you. Okay,
so that brings me on to the crime figures, which hopefully people have had a chance to look through. I have produced it for the previous 6 months from the report when it was submitted and the year beforehand to give you some level of comparison. I don't think it's fair to say that everything we've done as police has decreased crime by 20% over COVID. I'd love to claim that, but we've done an excellent job. There are some natural reasons for that to happen. If anything, I would say that demand has gone up. We're certainly seeing more complex demand. I sat and went through with my domestic violence coordinator yesterday, and I've had 9 high-risk domestics in the last month. And certainly within the Community Safety Hub in terms of complex needs. And I know Stacey's now nodding her head furiously. And I've gone again. We've seen a lot of demand coming through, which wouldn't necessarily be crime. So I think the figures kind of speak for themselves, but I'm more than happy to take any questions in relation to it if hands are going up.
Members, have we got any questions? We've got Councillor Hull. Would you like to unmute yourself, please?
Thanks, Chair. Yes, can I just, looking at those crime statistics, how worried should we be about the predominance of the violence against the person? I mean, it kind of really, it's twice as much again as the theft, if you like, which is more something that we'd recognise. I'm just wondering how serious, if you like, what's the range of violence against another individual is swept into those figures, and how worried should we all be? I mean, it's not broken down again on the next page by categories, but just whether it's localized or what, it's just a really worrying one for this part of the world, really.
So the violence against a person figures includes anything from what's called a Section 39 assault, which can be battery without any injury. It can also be the fear of unlawful violence. So if I went and raised my hand or my fist at Stacey, even without contacting her, in theory, that could be assault. It can be where I've hit her, but there is no injury. But it goes all the way up through to 47, where we've got injuries, Section 18, which is wounding, attempt 18s, and then I'm pretty sure it wouldn't include manslaughter or murder in those figures, but it is a really wide spectrum of incidents. It would include domestic violence within there. It would also include anything like neighbour disputes, anything where people are coming into conflict. It'd be really hard for me to break that down in terms of who are the victims and offenders, so to speak. I could probably break it down by classification of injury, and I would strongly suspect you are looking at the Section 39 and 47 as the predominant categories within that. We don't have a lot of, say, Section 18 woundings, and even then, the majority, any of those would probably be domestic from personal memory in that period of time.
I can appreciate the real difficulties, obviously, of your service there, because in a way this is a crime that you pick up after the event, really. That presumably the extent to which you can anticipate, put prevention in place, etc., which is quite different, isn't it, to sort of theft and fraud and so on. So how worried should we be locally about the fact that this does so predominate in the list of general crime?
Well, certainly in respect of these figures, we pick up every single day any kind of linked theories, any kind of patterns. Generally, you get them in acquisitive crime of theft rather than in relation to a violence against a person. There is no patterns as such. There is work that we do around domestic violence, but again, it's not a bad thing that comes to the comes out and actually that gets reported to us, because actually we would encourage people to report those types of offences to us. If it's, we used to get an awful lot through the nighttime economy, and actually, in all honesty, we don't get those assaults and the nighttime issues that we used to police town centres really heavily because we had to, and that's certainly not the case over this period of these crime figures. If I certainly haven't been worried, because there's nothing that's out to me as out of the norm. It is in keeping with previous years. It's not something that there's a trend that's come across that I'm thinking that there's something I can actually prevent, as you say, intervene earlier to really do something about. Because absolutely, if I can prevent a victim of crime, I'm not interested in investigating it. I want to prevent everything that I possibly can.
I appreciate your sentiments there. Thank you.
Right, Councillor Hull's clearly worried if she goes out getting a bit leery, she might get caught. But anyway, Councillor Brown.
Two things I want to pick up on around issues that have been reported to me by people locally that I think have a pattern impact of elsewhere potentially. First is the crime of people coming in from outside, trying to use disused land as places to motorbike ride off-road. We had real problems on Connolly lead mines of it being advertised on a website and people arriving, and the consequences. You can see the impact of drug use, paraphernalia, alcohol paraphernalia, and it's not sort of 15, 16-year-olds, it's 20, 22-year-olds doing it. As it's on private land, when I ring 101, I'm told it's limited what police can do. But I think the associated crime around that is quite serious, and it could be a pattern, and it's something I think other rural areas could have concerns about if they've got land that looks to the people that want to do this to be an attractive place to go off-roading. Second one I want to raise is probably more serious. We've got a lot of new building going on in the area. In my village, I've got one estate of 103 houses just almost completed, and another estate of 8. Both have had high-end cars stolen inside weeks of the opening of the estate, and the pattern of crime around that has since spread into my village of Connolly, with people in the wider village concerned about vehicles being attempted to be broken into. The parish council asked if I could get somebody from the police along to talk to them at their next meeting to discuss the issue. But just I wanted to put that in the thinking of how to perhaps prevent crime as new estates come on board, because they look quite attractive to a criminal as a place to go, where there might not be the same level of natural policing as there is in a long-established community where everybody knows what they're looking at. And they've certainly seemed to have managed to disappear with some quite high-value stuff without enormous consequences for the offenders in my village. So I just wondered if you had any comments on those two things.
Okay, so in respect of the Connolly lead mile, actually that's been on our patrol plan. Stacey raised that as a potential issue that was brought up. So we included that on our patrol plan. I think that must be at least a month, 6 weeks ago at least. So we have been regularly patrolling. I've not heard of the motorbike issue, but we have heard of individuals in cars going up to that end. We will continue with that. I would encourage any members to, any individuals, members of the public to report that, because if we don't know, we don't know. And as you say, it's quite an isolated area. So thank you very much. But yes, we were aware of that.
Just very quickly, could I just say that's about the timescale in which I reported it. So thank you for picking it up that quickly, and I'll get back to the farmer who was particularly concerned and let him know that it is actually on the patrol schedule. Thank you.
Okay, and lovely. In respect of the high-end vehicles that have gone, I was just been asking Stacey, in terms of locality-wise, that'll be South Craven, Lothersdale, Connolly, is that right? So this week, with the local beat manager and the PCSOs, we've collated all the figures of all the crime in respect to South Craven, looking at pattern, looking at trends. It's incredibly difficult because I don't have any at the minute. But the reason for putting that together is to ask for extra resource, as well as flagging that up, which I've done with all the response teams and all the local resource that we've got, to say there is an issue, but it's very hard to predict, because it's quite nice, isn't it, when you get something that happens every Sunday night, any Wednesday, what times and dates, especially when I'm trying to ask for force resource. But I can still put a bid in when I've got enough incidents, which I've got a list for everything that's happened in the last month that I've put forward. So yes, we are aware of it. In respect of the new estates, there was a crime overnight. There's definitely something around new builds that we're getting in returns of theft of boilers, sorts of equipment. That's definitely triggered over at Harrogate. That's the first time I've seen it over here within Craven. So we need to be mindful of that. During lockdown, people will look for new ways of working, and we need to adapt for that. So I wasn't aware that the vehicles that have gone have been specifically to a new estate, but I can definitely, that's useful information, because I am trying to look for patterns for crime, for series, so I can go back and look at that, because we tend to look at geographic locations and times and dates, but we don't necessarily know, well, that's a new build house, which might be a factor that we now need to look for in the future. More than happy to go to the parish council. I've asked the troops to go out and do surgeries to start getting the messages out. It's darker nights. It's, as you say, it's high-end vehicles. If anything, I would expect an increase in burglaries and more vehicles in the next couple of months. So we need to be attuned to that. So an opportunity to speak to the parish council, absolutely, we will go across. And we were talking with you, Stacey, about what target hardening stuff that we have, and she's nodding again. Yeah. So we've gone through Community Safety Hub in respect of, lighting, you know, anything that we can get done with cameras, anything target hardening wise that we can try and bring along with us, because it's always nice to give free things out while giving advice, because people seem to like it more.
Two quick bits of feedback, if I may, Chair. One is really grateful if Guy could remind us all of your email address afterwards, so we can sort of just do simple liaisons like the parish council thing. The second thing is just to say that the pattern that we spotted in the village of Connolly in particular was that it was not just the new estates, it was very high-end cars, and it seemed very professional crime. They were stealing cars that were very difficult to steal and very expensive to sell on, you'd imagine.
Councillor Brown, obviously I'm in the motor trade, and believe you me, the more expensive the car, probably the easier it is to steal, because quite a lot of the high-end cars have got remote entry.
Yeah, well,
so I think if you can educate people, you really need to educate them not to leave their keys. Yeah, the keys can be scanned from outside the building. Scan the key, get into the car, start it and take it quite often. I mean, certainly I don't leave my keys anywhere in near the windows or downstairs where a very easy entry can be made to take the keys. We had the same problem in my wards a couple of years ago. It seemed that Audis were being taken. There was I don't know, it was about 3 or 4, I think, at one point. I mean, Lorraine will be the expert on this, but certainly I think if we're going to educate residents and their area is being targeted, because clearly it sounds like that's what you've got, somebody that's using that as an area to swoop into because they feel it's easier to get cars from, then yeah, maybe the residents need to do a little bit of diligence themselves. I don't know if you've got any comments on that, Lorraine.
The localities, because I would suggest it's cross-border, that it's linked to West Yorkshire and our people coming across in that respect. There are things that we can do, like you said, high-end vehicle, you need to be aware that it is going to be a target. So whether that's a steering wheel lock, old-fashioned, don't park your car on your driveway, because then people know where you live. Actually, I believe insurance companies discount you if you park it on the street rather than your own driveway, because then they can't attribute it. They wreck it beforehand. You know, like you said, they know where they're going. So actually buy a banger, but I can't just say that, can I? So hopefully that's the advice that we go out and deliver, and trying to get forums. You know, we struggle sometimes a little bit with surgeries that we do. We don't get a lot of people into it. So we need to go out to the co-op. We need to go to places where people are naturally going to be. And if the parish council can assist us with getting some messages out, that will be really appreciated. Because the information is out there. It's just unfortunately until it happens, you don't expect it to happen to you.
Right, Councillor Sutcliffe.
Yes, Chairman, just a couple of quick questions. Looking at the categories, they won their possession of weapons. Could you clarify for me what exactly that would include? One would assume at one end of the scale it would be firearms. At the other end, would it include, for instance, carrying a kitchen knife? Or what I'm really saying is, what is defined as a weapon?
Well, a weapon is, it could be going equipped, it can be to commit offences, it could be a screwdriver, it could be a baseball bat, it could be a kitchen knife, and yes, up to guns. I mean, I've just looked at the National Ballistic Report. We only had 1 firearm discharged in the whole of North Yorkshire. So we're very fortunate when you think about some of the incidents in West Yorkshire and Greater Manchester Police. But yes, it is the full range if somebody's intending to commit an offence. We don't tend to have a massive issue at all with knife crime. We occasionally have an op disarm referral, which usually goes through the community safety hub or the school-based officer, where if we get intelligence that a young person is carrying a knife, or we've got intelligence around that, then we will go out and do some education with them. We will look to do early help, diversion, and really educate the individual, because actually if you do carry a weapon, it's more likely to be used on you rather than you having the opportunity to use it on someone else. So we really do try to educate young people in respect of it, but we don't have high numbers over here at Craven at all.
Right, thank you for that, Chairman. If I can now move on to another quick question. Over the page, Gargrave and Mallandale, there's 83 incidents. Do you have any breakdown of what percentage of that figure represents Gargrave? Obviously, in my ward, Gargrave is the main conurbation. Mallandale is A, extensive, and B, with the exception of Malham itself, is not a very dense centre of population, and the crime up there tends to be a totally different type of crime, usually associated with agriculture, compared with Gargrave, which tends to be more run-of-the-mill burglaries and matters of that kind. So do you have any breakdown for Gargrave on its own?
Not to hand. I can break it down for and I can send it through to you as well.
Well, if it's not too much trouble, if you could email me the breakdown, I can present it to the Gargrave Parish Council meeting at the beginning of next month.
I will. There is also, I can send you a link through where almost for a self-service, we do publish crime figures and they are available to be broken down by areas as well. The issue with that sometimes is a little bit of a time lag, but yes, it shouldn't be much hassle at all to send that through to you, Councillor.
Right, thank you very much. That's fine, thanks.
No problem, Councillor Sutcliffe. Now you raised the issue, I didn't realise it was so rough in Gargrave and Mallendale, but anyway.
I won't comment on that, Chairman. Not in the absence of Councillor Myers.
Councillor Soloway, please.
Just a question about one of the crimes, which is miscellaneous crimes against society. I mean, I keep coming back to this idea that we are still in a pandemic. And there was an issue that in fact, I raised it with the Director of Public Health with North Yorkshire, whether there was a specific crime of endangering public health. In the example of the person in Scotland who went and knowingly went into pubs and infected other people, or caused there to be a problem where they had to close these places. Do you see possibly in the future that if the government do back you and say, actually, we are going to give you specific powers to detain people or to arrest people because of this, because that can cause someone doing that willingly, maliciously, or even sort of just not caring, could cause a real problem into an economy of an area like ourselves or any other area. I'm just wondering if the crime figures might increase in that if the government give you more powers. And I just wanted to does miscellaneous crimes against society include endangering public health?
Lorraine, I think you need to unmute yourself.
No, I wouldn't expect it to include that crime, that offence, should I say. It'd be something around outraging public decency, something that we haven't naturally fitted into one of the other categories. If you're asking for my opinion, and it is just an opinion, I don't expect the COVID legislation to be included in our crime reports. We have crimeable offences, and then we have offences which are considered lower level, which we don't submit crimes from, and people don't get a criminal record almost on the back of. They'll get a record, but it won't be a crime. That's why they're bringing in specific COVID legislation, because it isn't covered by any other. So I don't necessarily expect that to change, but then who knows what will change in the future, because I certainly can't predict it.
Right. Perhaps it's not being from Yorkshire. That sounds like a crime, doesn't it? Now then, vehicle offences. We've got 46. Are they vehicle offences as in they're not actually related to motoring offences, are they? They're just vehicle crime. Would that be correct?
No, you could have like causing death by dangerous driving. There are some higher level offences that we include. It wouldn't include no insurance, but there are some driving offences that are related to the conduct of a driver. Your thefts, your vehicle thefts would be included in theft.
Right. So obviously something that seems to keep popping up in the Craven Hill more, this idea of drug offences while driving. Does that come under the drug offences heading or the vehicle offences? Do you know?
Off the top of my head, I've never broken it down. I wouldn't expect it to be included in vehicle offences, but I can definitely check for you whether that would be or not.
It just obviously it's been mentioned tonight, and as I say, it seems to be something that it's becoming more common, shall we say, in the in the court parts of the Craven area. I just wondered if it sort of fitted in. So, just out of interest, do you actually have access to any of the figures related to motoring issues? Clearly, obviously you said, the more serious motoring issues are recorded in these figures, but something that is constantly coming back, it seems, is the issue, surrounding problems with traffic. going through Craven. I know in my ward I've got quite a few of the villages who are complaining about speeding of, dare I say, motorbikes, among others. How does that fit in with your figures, or do you get access?
I wouldn't necessarily expect that to be captured in the crime figures or any driving offences figures. I don't think I would be able to get it naturally from a quick breakdown, which is what I've done through this. I would have to interrogate our niche system in order to start delivering. That would actually be quite time consuming to do. I think you're absolutely right, though. There are motorbike issues, noise issues certainly that's cropped up, concerns around speeding. There was a road safety meeting 10 days ago, I want to say, maybe less, a week ago, which was attended by Johnny Stobbs from the Community Safety Hub. We are looking at, we've bought some noise calibration kit, or it's on order, and Stacey's nodding at me again. There is an Operation Tortoise, which we've landed, and there is a problem-solving plan at a force level, because it's not just specific to Craven, that we are looking at what we can do to target, and especially getting us prepared for next year as well, because again, just like the beauty spots, it just puts a different focus on, and people have definitely noticed the upsurge from lockdown. Lots of complaints came through about how we were dealing with motorbikes as well, and the speed of them. I mean, one of my biggest concerns is the fatality rate that we've got within Craven, that we don't seem to be able to get a grip on as much as I would like. You know, every fatality costs something like the public purse about £2 million. And it's not about money. You know, prevention in that sense is so logical, and yet it seems to be a real challenge for us as a collective. I'm not just talking about the police there, as a partnership.
Yeah, I think clearly people's desire to drive motorbikes fast is not going to really abate, and it's something that unfortunately we're going to have to deal with to some degree. Now then, I've got Councillor Brockbank, Councillor Sutcliffe, and Councillor Morby. So Councillor Brockbank first, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, before I ask my question, can I ask that, that my comment regarding Craig Lyons, our public safety officer here in Bentham, that's included in the minutes. I've got some wording here if that will help, and then Lorraine can then pass those minutes on for whoever it needs to go to. It's really that Craig's good work is really just it's very welcome in the community. We found that the presence of a PCSO has been a real advantage. Craig is integrating into the community really well. He has a positive contribution to the community. He's enthusiastic, he's helpful, and he's proactive, and we really want to keep him. So my question regarding the crime figures are, how many of the internet-related crime?
Ooh, how many are cyber-enabled? That isn't broken down into the figures, and I wouldn't be able to say, and I'm just expecting that would just increase and continue to do so. Certainly when it comes to offences, harassment, stalking, the CSE related world, definitely involving social media, drug related, social media is definitely on the up. I don't necessarily need figures to say that that's going up. Fraud, I don't have those figures to hand, but absolutely expecting that the crimes, even things that you wouldn't necessarily traditionally expect to be cyber enabled, absolutely are.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Morby.
Right, you took me by surprise then. Just to say that after my comments at the last meeting of crime and disorder and my complaints about Long Preston, yes, the traffic still goes through quickly, but I thank you for actually, there seems to be more of a presence of the camera van there now. unfortunately, of course, once somebody sees it, then everybody else knows about it. But thank you anyway for at least trying. I don't know whether you have any figures for speeding at Long Preston, but anyway, thank you.
I will pass that back to my safety camera van, who do a fantastic job. I know they're not always the most popular, but for me, I absolutely encourage every van that I can get across over to Craven because of the links to the fatalities. So yes, thank you very much for that. I'll pass it on to them. I'm sure they'll be chuffed.
I will just raise, because on this very similar issue, part of my ward, Ribble Banks ward, it includes villages of Rathmell and Wigglesworth. They do still seem to be blighted by speeding vehicles and HGVs, which would appear to not legitimately be on that road. Is there something that can be done with this in terms of getting the? I mean, they've got a motorcycle with a little mobile unit, haven't you? If memory serves. Is it possible that we can sort of look at trying to liaise with the parish councils there, which Ribble Banks parish, full stop, should I say, to try and get some presence there at some point in the future? Because I mean, although the biking season is getting towards the end of its sort of peak, nonetheless, there are still quite a number of bikes flying through there. It seems to be a bit of a bunny run, if you like, from East Lancs.
So absolutely, we can link in with the parish council. We've got online mechanisms that I would ask people to report that through again, because sometimes people assume that we know, and actually the more reports we get and the more information we can get, we can make an assessment, because we do have to prioritise areas. And there's a lot of competing demand. You know, we've just put forward around Cowling, which has been an issue around speeding, which again isn't anything new, so that we've got a finite resource that we have to allocate accordingly. But I will send some information through about how those reports can come through to us, which I've viewed from the safety camera van team, who actually I think are phenomenal. They do a really, really good job.
Yeah, please, if you would, that'd be appreciated. Now, there was somebody else who had a hand raised, and it seems to have gone down. Has anybody got any questions?
It may have been Councillor Sutcliffe. I think he was possibly indicating that he wanted to leave. He was about to leave the meeting.
We did explain that earlier, so no, I'll stand corrected. That's fine, guys. Thank you. Well spotted. Right, members, if there's anything else that you'd like to ask while we have in here. While we have
Councillor Staveley, I think you might have a connection issue.
Hello?
You're back.
Yes, I seem to have momentarily been blighted by bad internet connection, would you believe it? No, maybe not.
You're back on.
Right, yeah, so members, anything else?
If I could make one tiny comment.
Yeah, carry on. If you can hear me.
I can. I
Carry
don't
on,
know if anyone else can. This will be my last Crime and Disorder Select Committee with yourselves. I will let you know when my replacement comes through, and I'm not going yet for a couple of months. But thank you all very much for your support, and I will definitely pick up on the actions that you sent through to me or raised with me today.
I hope the replacement's remotely as good. You've been very fine.
Yeah, I will do my best. I'm going to interview them personally. I will not have nothing but the best for Craven.
Are we done, Chair?
I'm just struggling at the minute. My internet connection seems to be working, but it doesn't seem to be working with everybody else.
Yeah, I think we've got you back now.
Right.
We could hear you loud and clear.
Right, yeah, because everybody's images have frozen. I've just checked the line speed and everything seems to be in order. So, right, if you can hear me, is anybody else want to speak? Pipe up. If there isn't, we'll move on to the next item.
No one else has indicated they want to speak, Councillor Staveley.
Right, that'll do, guy. Thank you. So, I think, if I'm not wrong, we've done, Stacey, we did your bit, didn't we? So, I think that,
We did, Chair. Yeah.
yeah, there's nothing else. So, I think that brings us to the end of that item. Right, any other items?
Chair, I'm not aware of any other items.
Right. Date of the next meeting?
The date of the next crime and disorder meeting is the 9th of December. So we will, at that meeting, we'll have the usual local crime overview. We'll have a report from Stacey on community safety. I also have a note on the schedule to invite County Councillor Les, chair of the police and crime panel. So I'll make sure that invitation goes out to him as well.
Oh, I'm sure he'll be dying to come to speak to us, won't he? For many reasons. Anyway, so yes, I think with that we'll bring this meeting to an end, members. Would anybody? Oh, you're all moving again. We must be back online properly. Does anybody want a comfort break, or can we just go straight into the next meeting? No, but it's static, so I'll take that as read. Right. So, right. Thank you for your attendance, Lorraine. Stacey, much appreciated. Thank you.
I'll go put the kids to bed. Have a very good evening. Thank you very much.
No problem. Take care. All the best. Right. So, select committee. Wednesday, the 9th of September. Item 1, apologies for absence.
Thank you, Chairman. We've had apologies for absence from Councillors Pighills, Councillor Harborough, and I'll say also Councillor Sutcliffe.
Right, thank you very much.
It, Chair. Quick roll call, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So again, Councillor Staveley.
Present.
Councillor Brockbank.
Present.
Councillor Brown.
Still here.
Councillor Hull.
Present.
Councillor Jacquin.
Harry, you were muted. Oh, I'm just about to unmute. Present.
Thank you. Councillor Mercer.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Moorby.
Present.
Councillor Shuttleworth.
Present.
Councillor Soloway.
I'm present.
And that's it, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Public participation. Have we got any members of the public wishing to speak?
No members of the public in attendance?
Oh, well, fair play. Never mind. Declarations of interest, members. No, not looking like anybody's really that interested. That'll do. And then item 5, absence management. If you'd like to get a presentation on that. Last. Ah, there we are.
Sorry. Good evening, everybody. I'm just going to present the absence management report meeting from April 2019 to March 2020. We were set a target of 8.5 days, we actually came in at 9.17 days, which is 7.88% above the target. However, in 2018-19, we lost 2,204 working days to sickness, and for 2019-20, this was decreased to 1,872.3 days. This was a decrease of 15.09% in days lost per FTE compared to the same period, which was the previous year, which equates to 331.7 days less than 2018-19. You've got a graph there again that shows you the number of days. So this shows that the total levels of absence have increased annually since March 2018, but have decreased by 15% in the last 12 months. Short-term absence has fallen each year from 4.3 days per FTE in March 2016 and has remained at 3.4 days since March 2019. Long-term absence has increased each year from 2015-16, and it peaked at 7.4 days in 2018-19, but now it has decreased to 5.77 days for 2019-20. I think, as you're aware, long-term absence is classed when it's 4 weeks continuous absence. The number of days per FTE lost to long-term absence has decreased by 22% in the last 12 months. That equated to 22 members of staff who had long periods of absence between April 2019 and March 2020. 58% of long-term absence was due to stress, depression, anxiety-related illnesses. 20% of this was work-related, so this equated to 11 members of staff, of which 3 were work-related. Of the 22 at the time that were on long-term absence, 2 were absent, however that went down to 1 after this report was done. The average length of long-term absence was 53.5 working days. I've given you then the next chart is the reasons for long-term absence by days lost. The Oasis counselling is still widely used by members of staff, and there's just a few comments around from what staff have told the Oasis counselling system. We don't actually find out who it is, and we do work closely with Oasis to make sure that referrals are done quickly. Of the 8 referrals, there were 6 female and 2 were the male. 6 other referrals went with home-related issues ranging from poor health, anxiety, bereavement, and various other relationship issues. The other 2 sought counselling for issues relating to the workplace, manifesting in anxiety, depression, and communication breakdown. And we want a short-term absence. The number of days per FTE lost to short-term has remained at 3.4 days since March 2019. Again, the main cause for short-term absence is stomach, liver, kidney, digestion, viral infections, and musculoskeletal problems. Back to work, as you know, back to work duties are carried out by line managers, and where necessary, we would advise that they seek help with occupational help if the symptoms reoccur. Item 7 is absence by service area, so that gives you the breakdown of the services, what they had. And then the one that you all like to hear about is the absence in waste management. So the graph there shows that overall levels of absence in waste management has decreased by 33% over the last 12 months, from 23.4 to 15.9 days per FTE. The most common reason for short-term absence was musculoskeletal problems, stomach, liver, digestion, and stress and anxiety. Long-term absence has decreased by 40%, from 17.5 to 10.5 days per FTE. The stress and depression and anxiety related issues were the main reasons for the absence. However, the majority of it wasn't work related, it was personal stress. And again, we have dealt with that as well through Oasis counselling and via occupational health. I want to talk a little bit about COVID absence. When we first went on lockdown, we were really quick with the offices. People went straight home, started working from home. We've put a lot of effort into making sure that people were happy working from home. We've carried out a wellbeing survey right from the very start, which helped us to identify any problems that people had. And it could be the simplest of things like not having the correct chair, not having the correct screen, etc. So we identified any problems that way. We created a 10 top tips for working from home for people, and also for managers to manage people that were working from home. We had a weekly newsletter, if you will, from our chief executive to tell us what was going on, you know, what was being put in place, and staff really looked forward to that on a weekly basis. We had leaflets put in Core Brief, which helped people with stress, advising them how to cope with it, to how to change from the work patterns from being at home all the time. Again, they proved to be really good. So you also asked about the equalities during COVID-19. So from March the 17th to the 31st of July, we had 41 employees who were directly affected by COVID due to self-isolating with suspected symptoms, shielding, caring responsibilities for children or vulnerable people, or absence due to suspected COVID-19. 15 employees weren't able to work from home, and 26 were unable to work from home. We had a couple of employees that took the test and they came back clear. Again, we were really quick with that, ensuring that staff knew where these centres were, where they could go get tested, etc. At the very beginning of the outbreak, we had quite a few people that had come back from holiday, so therefore they had to self-isolate as per government guidance. So again, we accommodated that with people being able to work from home, etc. We also had, where some of our services weren't running, we redeployed people into other areas just so that they could keep on coming into work, etc. We had business support and customer services did a sterling job with helping people. Customer services worked tirelessly to ring people up, or vulnerable people up, to find out if they were all right, if they need any help. We had business support printing off and sending emails for people, etc., so that we didn't have very many people coming into the office, and when they did, they could come in whenever they wanted, so they could come in at night time when there was nobody in. But it is very safe in the offices anyway. So the breakdown, the equality of information was 98% of those who were affected by COVID-19 were white British. No employee had a disability, 46 were female and 54 were male. 32 affected were between the ages of 45 and 54. I have some graphs that I can send you if you'd like me to. It gives you the breakdown as well by age and gender. That's the conclusion of the report. I'm happy to take any questions if anybody's got any. Thank you.
Yeah, I think if you don't mind sharing that breakdown of information for completeness, obviously you've gone to the trouble of creating the figures, so I think for those members who are keen to know, it'd be worthwhile. Have you got any questions, members? No. Weird. Right. Oh, no. Councillor Soloway.
You're muted, Andy. Andy, you're muted.
There you go. Right. It's more a praise for the staff at this council who have kept things going, whether they've been in the office, which is when I went to the office to pick up my computer, I felt very secure and very safe there, or whether they've been working from home. Our council has just stepped up to the plate, really has. And all this talk about going back into offices, I actually think that Craven District Council are actually running much more efficiently by not having everybody in the offices. And I think a lot of organisations have discovered that. And I just want to put that out to, while I'm speaking to Head of Human Resources, our staff have been absolutely magnificent in keeping not only the council going, but keeping meetings going and the democratic business of the council going as well. I just can't praise them highly enough. And I have to say, special mention, the IT chaps, they've been absolutely superb.
Thank you,
Would you mind if I just came in on that? I think the response to the staff has been absolutely brilliant. And, you know, that's not just in what you see, but it's, for example, Leisure Centre was closed. We got volunteers from the Leisure Centre to actually go as loaders on refuse collection. You know, the flexibility of staff was just fantastic. And as you say, I also think the actual quality of the service that we've maintained, whether that is in giving business grants, which again was an incredible exercise, but exercised very, very professionally, very efficiently and very quickly, to supporting the community, which we did a heck of a lot of in working with the community to make sure that people weren't isolated, weren't vulnerable. It has been a fantastic response. And it's quite interesting as well. We talked last time, if I remember correctly, about how we've got a silver bullet, which will cure all sickness absence. Whilst I don't think we'll ever quite get that, certainly working from home is pointing towards quite a reduction in absence. At the moment, we're looking at an average of about 1.45% this year. So it has had a quite dramatic effect working from home on a good number of employees, and certainly on the sickness absence figures. So thank you, Chair.
Yeah, well, when you're working from home, every day is a stay-at-home day, isn't it, I suppose? But yeah, absolutely. I think we all need to echo the sentiments expressed about the staff at Craven. I think, as you say, we've done fantastically well to maintain the services. As you say, interesting point about the Leisure Centre staff stepping in to help with the waste management. I'm wondering if maybe there's a scope for a new type of gym class that we could offer our customers, where they actually just go and load the bin wagons for us and we'll just charge them for the privilege. Happy days. Anyway, Councillor Hull, if you'd like to pick up next, please, and unmute yourself.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. This is maybe, appreciate everything that's been said and obviously echo that. I don't know, just picking up, particularly kind of travelling around in the car and listening to the radio, organisations are starting to grapple with what comes next. Will we see the majority of the staff continuing to be home-based, or will we see moving back into the sort of traditional office arrangements that we've always had? It's maybe a bit early to ask anybody that today, but I'm just intrigued whether you're getting any feedback, possibly non-verbal, from your staff about where they see the balance, or whether you've got something particular in mind in terms of when the restrictions are lifted or continuing to lift, where you see that balance between that home working and the traditional model that we've been used to.
Yeah, a really valid question, good question. So the staff in general, well, the vast majority are very happy to work from home. Although what we're trying to do now is offer them a rota so they can come in, I don't know, 1 day a week, whatever, within their teams. And we let the teams work that between them. And actually, that's working really well. Again, it's been very responsive. Do I see 100% return to the office by Christmas? Absolutely not. We will stay at about 20 to 25%. That's what we've set up for, and that's what we'll continue to deliver within these offices to keep the safe environment that Councillor Soloway actually referred to keep that, and we will keep that safe environment. So we're giving the option to staff if they feel they need to come in. And if they're actually happy working at home all the time, that's great. What we do insist on, though, is the teams meetings, so that they don't lose contact with everybody. They don't lose contact with what's going on. They don't lose that social contact, because we are social animals at the end of the day. And that's partly why offices do work. But from our point of view, we will keep at that roughly 20-25% occupation rate for the foreseeable future. And I say certainly Christmas, and I think it will stretch beyond Christmas. What we've got to look at is what is best for our staff. And if there is an added bonus to us that actually sickness absence is down but productivity is up, then why would we look back to the past? You wouldn't. You'd look to the future, which also means that maybe we need to look at some of the accommodation here and see what we can possibly produce an income from in terms of that as well. So yeah, you're absolutely right, Councillor Hull. yes, we are actively looking at it, we're actively monitoring it, and we're actively monitoring the views of the staff as well, which are absolutely crucial in this. So.
Okay, that all sounds very positive and inclusive. You just prompted another little question in my mind there in relation to sickness. It'd be very interesting to track the data that we've been looking at just for the past period, because presumably we're going to see a reduction in people actually reporting sickness if actually they continue with their work and as they are at home. It'd be interesting, wouldn't it, to see whether that is the case or it continues to be reported. But anyway, that's just a bit rhetorical at the moment. Thanks for your answer, that's really helpful.
I honestly think it is still being reported, but I think staff are genuinely happier at home. And you know, if they happen to start at, I don't know, 10 o'clock, or they had childcare, so they couldn't start till the afternoon, whatever, that's fine, as long as the work's done. You know, we need to be a flexible employer as well, because we appreciate the work that the staff do. As long as it's got through, actually, we've been very flexible on the times to accommodate, I think, a lot of things that you were talking about, Councillor Hull.
Good. I hope they remain so positive. Thank you.
Right, so as an employer, I'd like to think that I'm a flexible and as accommodating as Craven District clearly have been with their employees. I just hope that the rest of the commercial sector throughout Craven is following that example. Very well that it is. Councillor Brown, then Councillor Brockbank, please.
Just a quick aside from the main point, which is that the refuse staff, I think it'd be interesting to see the impact on stress of getting praise from the community when they've been used to getting, you know, criticism. And I think the amount of praise I've heard from the community directly voiced to them, it'd be very interesting to see what impact that has on morale. But the main thing I wanted to say is the comment about what we need in terms of staff working from home and the consequences of that for the offices. I was going to raise this point under the work programme, but I think I'd like to raise it now. On 25th of November, we've got a meeting on the impact of COVID on council services. It'd be useful at that point, I think, to consider not just any kind of negative or stresses or whatever, but any issues for the future, such as are there implications for how large the offices we need and what kind of savings might we be able to make as a consequence? I wonder if we could ask for some kind of, I mean, I appreciate the incredibly early stage and incredibly speculative, but if we could ask for some kind of report on the 25th of November of what the first thoughts are of the impact on the office space requirement and potential savings from the changes in the work patterns.
I don't think that'd be, it'd be very high level, but I don't think that'd be an issue at all. 25th of November, fine. The other comment I would make on refuse staff, actually, they have been the most popular element of local government services in every survey that is ever carried out. You do get the odd hiccup when rounds are actually changed or something of that nature, but in Craven, I've got to say, any survey we've done, it's always refuse collection which comes out the top. So I think they are praised by the large majority of the people for a large amount of time. And during the COVID period, I just think they excelled themselves, as I say, with the cooperation from other staff from other sectors, which was brilliant.
Right. I mean, just on Councillor Brown's point, I think to be fair, this authority has always looked to be, you know, since our move to Bellevue Mills, we always have been quite aware of the running costs of this facility and look to mitigate our costs. I think that's fair to say, would you say, Paul? And we've reduced it where necessary.
Absolutely right, and that's why the Community Safety Hub is actually situated here. I don't know if you noticed when Jackie was just about to introduce her paper, Lorraine stuck her head around the door and that was part of the distraction we had. So yeah, the Community Safety Hub is literally around the corner, as indeed is Selfa, and we are in discussion with the police about the long term for the Community Safety Hub and possibly other areas. So we are very alive to any opportunities that come our way as far as the office accommodation is right. You know, we've also had Atos doing their work on assessments for disability. in these offices here. They didn't used to be a local service at all until we approached them. So again, we're very happy to look at any opportunities that may, or even if we have to create them, come our way.
So you'll be moving your office into the small kitchenette on the first floor, and we'll be renting that out next as well. Good to hear you.
That's where we are, Councillor Staveley.
Right, I've got Councillor Brockbank, Councillor Shuttleworth.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's a question really for the Chief Exec, I think, this one. Do any of our staff visit people at home?
Do they meet people? No. There are no business meetings take place in their own homes, if that's what.
No, sorry. What I was meaning was, do any of the staff go and visit any of the residents at their home? For example, Revs and Bens or.
No, in general, no. The one that we can't avoid face contact is the homeless service, but we've got a protocol put in place there in order to guard, well, both parties against possible infection. But I'm not aware of any other, I can't think of any other where we would need to have that person to person. We do it a lot on Teams, a lot on Zoom. I think we've learned a lot in the process of capabilities and abilities of technology. I think it's advanced our thinking, COVID, by approximately 2 years.
Okay, thank you.
Right, Councillor Shuttleworth and Councillor Mercer.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I think Councillor Brockbank may have just hit me to the post on this one, but I'm going to take advantage of the presence of Mr. Watson and ask, how has working from home affected planning service administration, particularly in relation to site inspections and enforcement?
Chairman, if you want me to come back on that one.
Yeah, come on, please.
The situation is that we have been carrying out site visits to obviously do the function that we need to do. The difficulties have been, but we have managed a way around it, is that if you need to go inside a building, and particularly something like a listed building, that has had to have some risk management done to it in some advanced warning, because we want to be able to say, well, you know, we build the communication up. We need to have a look at the dining room, the kitchen, whatever it is in the listed building. Will you please open the front door and then disappear? And we know where we're walking through the building, and we'll say thank you very much and let you know when we're about to leave. But we've got to keep that distancing from staff. And lots of site visits on planning can be done from public vantage points where you actually, you know, can stand on a highway or a pavement and very easily view the site. So there's only a limited amount of times where we would actually physically need to go into one. We've also looked at other options, because if you've got a terrace property with no back lane to that terrace property, so it doesn't have, you can't go down the back lane to actually look at the back of the house. What we've done under those circumstances is actually invite the applicant to submit us photographs of what the back of the house looks like. You know, so we're working to keep the service delivery. We've just had to invent slightly different ways of doing it than we would have done historically.
So you haven't, through you, Chairman, so you haven't experienced any material limitations then?
Not specifically. There have been some situations where applicants, you know, are almost insisting that they want a face-to-face meeting with you, and that's where there has been some difficulty. But we've worked other ways around communication, and I know that some members of the team are doing team meetings, you know, where possible, so that you get that face-to-face interaction. And I mean, one thing that I have encouraged the whole team is that, to me, communication is the most important thing in dealing with any planning application or any form of application that we deal with in development management. And that's the critical bit. And I think the way that we've had to review things, there would have been situations where a team member had an inquiry from somebody and you could have said, can I just have a quick word with me or any other officer in the development management team and give the answer there straight away. If you try and set up a three-way conference call or have to organise a Teams call, it takes away the immediacy, but we're doing our best to keep it going.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Shuttleworth. Councillor Mercer, if you'd like to unmute yourself, please.
Hello.
Hello.
Have you got me?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, this one's for Paul Shevlin. It's going back to Councillor Brockbank question about people visiting homes, and I've just realised that we now own our own DFG service, which would mean that there is a plethora of specialists who need contact with disabled people in their own homes. How is COVID? What impact has COVID had on this service, considering you've got contractors and installations and specialist equipment, and the importance of delivering that service to those people?
At the start of COVID, it was quite interesting because the hospitals wanted to clear the beds. And so there was a lot of work done up front in order to assist on that aspect of it. So, yeah, there has been a delay in some cases, but generally, Nina and her team have kept that going and kept it what is a vital service, because at times like this, you certainly don't want bed blocking, but you don't want the reverse. You don't want people going in hospital because they can no longer cope with their own home because the adaptation's not been carried out. So we try to work just as effectively. Yeah, lots of challenges there, I've got to say. Contractors being one of them at stages, but you know, it's about finding, I think as Neville referred to, it's about finding ways around the problem, doing a proper risk assessment, following that, and delivering what is needed for the individual clients.
You've gone off, Bill.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Right. Just on that point, Paul, do you know how we stand in terms of the uptake for the DFG, in terms of the resources that we're given in comparison to the demand? Because there was obviously a suspicion that as demand increased, we may start to sort of run short of funds. Is there any issues coming out that you know of, or is it something that we'd have to leave for another day?
I haven't got the figures to hand, but if we were running out of funds, I know that would have been flagged up.
Yeah.
And I know what we did towards the end of last year. We actually did a deal with the county council because they had a problem in one area which actually fitted into DFG. So we actually picked that up, handed some money across so that we worked together on solutions. And I think that's really important as well. We might not be able to do that every year, and it does, as you say, depend on demand, but happy to get the figures for you. That's not a problem.
I think now then, Guy, do we get a report on this? We've looked at this before, haven't we?
Yeah, it's part of our recommendation tracking. So we have another report back late in the municipal year. I can't remember exactly when, looking at the work schedule. So
yeah.
It can come back as part of the report back through our recommendation tracking.
No, that's great. That's great. Thank you. Members, any other questions? No, I'm seeing no virtual hands, so I'll take that as a result. Right then. So I think with that, well, thank you both for your time and attendance, and on to the next item, I believe. So I'm just scrolling up my agenda here. Yeah, recommendation tracking. Review of development control. Neville.
Thank you, Chairman. Obviously, this is a package that we put together to review the performance levels. Clearly, if members are not familiar with the situation, we are required to return to central government a quarterly return on performance, and that's obviously something that came out of involving the Planning Advisory Service when we were in somewhat rather dire straits in terms of the performance that we've done. There's been obviously a very significant improvement in it, not least of which, to a very large extent, it's attributable to two things: the commitment of the planning case team and the scheme of delegation and the way that it's actually handled. In terms of the recommendation tracking, I am aware that, and it's somewhat remiss, but other things have taken over, is the report to Planning Committee on reintroducing the performance monitoring reports. And the intention is that I will, because we do it on a quarterly basis, so you've got Q1 from April to June, Q2 from July through to the end of September. The intention is to actually produce a report which will come to committee. It won't be the September meeting, and I can't guarantee that it will be the October meeting, but it will certainly be before the end of the year, when I will review the decisions that are being made and what sort of decisions are being made, with a view to reporting that to committee. I've also been working alongside Rob Atkin, who is producing reports that will go to policy committee at some stage in the near future. So it's not something that has been achieved yet, but it's certainly a commitment, and that will happen sometime later in the autumn, in what will be effectively Q3. I do apologise that I only unfortunately got to the point of being able to circulate the information to members about the pre-application inquiry figures for what other authorities charge, and I circulated that to an email to members this afternoon. There's actually...
have all members seen that? Yes. We'll just ask, have all members seen this document that's been sent round?
Yes, I have.
Yeah, it's in your emails. Anybody? Everybody? Can we just have something?
I haven't seen it, no, sorry.
It was about...
Right, it's in your emails.
It was 3:15 this afternoon.
No, I haven't seen it yet.
All right.
You lot not check your emails, goodness sake.
I've read it.
Know what
No, I went through everything was new before I came on this call.
Maybe not, but anyway. Sorry, Neville, carry on.
So obviously, we are charging comparable amounts to other authorities in North Yorkshire. There are a couple of elements to it that I would like to review, and I'll have to take it through the appropriate process, because certainly Scarborough actually charges for the duty officer inquiries. We offer that service as a walk-in free service. We only charge a limited amount for householder inquiries. Do I need planning permission? And that, I think, stands currently at £25. Harrogate charge 80 for that advice, Hambleton 66, Rydale 60, Richmond 60, Scarborough charge 24. So that's something that I would like to think as more of an income stream, that we could increase it to actually charge for the duty officer things, because under the current situation, we used to do duty officers where effectively you could walk in off the street and stand in the queue. Well, obviously we can't have that now, so we've introduced an appointment system. And if you've got an appointment system, which is what we're running at the moment, I think it would not be unreasonable to actually charge for that service, as other authorities do. Not least of which is that we would be actually delivering a better service by the appointment system, because what's happening is that we get advance warning of what the inquiry is, rather than somebody walking in off the street and whoever is the duty officer having, to the best of their professional ability, give advice off the cuff. While we don't have that significant amount of large residential pre-application inquiries, which are ones over 51, because the local plan and the allocations in the local plan have effectively taken up the large number of sites that would have been for 50 houses plus. And the chances of getting a pre-application inquiry now for 50 plus houses that has not been considered through the local plan process is perhaps a little remote. But obviously we only charge 1,323. You may wonder where the strange figures come from that, but it's the VAT element to it that gives you funny figures like that. Harrogate charge at £1,000 more at 2,395. Hambleton charge more than we do. Rydale don't. Richmond don't charge as much, and Scarborough give you advice on large residential sites for the princely sum of £360. So I think that is something that it's been a useful exercise, and I think that there are ways that I could actually look forward to bringing forward a greater income stream by reviewing what we charge for the advice and the level of information that's provided. The figures that I've given you this afternoon also refer to commercial development, and they generally fall in the larger categories, but it's not very common that we get a pre-application cold inquiry for a large commercial site, but it is something that is there. Moving on to recommendation C, that has been implemented in its entirety because the parish council now only get electronic copies of the applications in consultation, and any advice we give is now online. I would encourage, and I've certainly been talking to the chairman about it recently, is to encourage members to ask questions of officers with any applications that are in their ward, or indeed any other inquiry that you may have. So it's another communications issue that I would like to reinforce and invite members to consider. The final issue, I don't know whether Guy can help me on this one, is whether the IT service, which is point D, whether the IT service have introduced measures to minimise risk to the installation of new IT. I would rather guess, given all the work that's been done with new hardware for members and all new updates to the uniform system, I'm sure IT have got that on board. So I think in terms of the recommendations, I can advise the select committee that we have done it or are working continuously to achieve those recommendations. Thank you, Chairman.
Right, we'll take questions. I've got Councillor Brown and Councillor Morby. If you'd like to unmute yourself, Councillor Brown.
Just on the question of fees, I mean, I did think the table was very informative, and thanks for sending it through. I mean, there are areas where we're clearly remarkably cheap, considering the amount of effort we put in and the amount of profit that can be made from the site. I was particularly struck by the smallness of some of the fees on the very large developments, which must take us hours and hours of work to give good advice. The only thing I'd say contrary to that is, when we're thinking about some of the smaller developments, we've got to remember we're not just a profit earning service, we're providing a service to our electors and our citizens. And I think people expect to be able to pick up the phone and ask, if I put a conservatory in, what do I have to do? What sort of size am I allowed to get away with? Those sort of general sort of stuff. I think people really just want to be able to do that without any charge and expect it, and we'll get quite cross if we start overcharging for it. The detailed meeting where they want us to look at a plan and tell us whether that plan is acceptable, I think it's sensible to talk about booking that in as an appointment and making it get close to the cost of doing it, because most of the people that can afford, let's put it this way, if I could afford to put an extension on the back of my house, I could afford to pay for the cost of £60 to have a meeting that told me whether it was a waste of time or a good plan I was putting in.
Certainly, the issue with that, I mean, we do offer a service that is called Do I Need Planning Permission, for which we charge the nominal £25. That is not, and I think we discussed this at Select Committee in the past about having an application for a certificate of lawful proposed development. We offer that service for £25, and it does give them the comfort that while it's not binding, we look at what the applicant is proposing and give them an indication of whether they are likely to get planning permission. I would be reluctant to actually do that just as a telephone inquiry, because what my interpretation of what I'm being told might be different to what the applicant thinks they are being told or think that they are telling. So we'd have to be careful about that. But I think there is, there is some way. I mean, £60 to be told that your £5,000 conservatory is likely to be a runner is a drop in the ocean, and I think that there is scope for reviewing inquiries like that. And, bear in mind, Harrogate charge 80, Hambleton charge 66, Rydale 60, Richmond 60. The fact that we don't have any scheduled stuff other than the £25 do I need planning permission things, I think that's certainly one area that could be reviewed. And it is there as a service. It takes some research time because it means us having to check what the history of the site is going to be. So in terms of actual time, officer time and response time, we're certainly not in it as a profit-making exercise, but I do think it would more readily reflect and cover the officer time costs rather than offering the free or very cheap advice. But I take the point entirely, Councillor Brown. We can have a little look at that.
Right. Is that okay, Councillor Brown? Councillor Morby, if you'd like to unmute yourself, please.
Yes, certainly. I'll just very quick one. It's regarding. You've mentioned commercial plans and pre-planning. Would you class the flashes just as commercial, or that is all I want to know, please? And how much would you charge for that? For example.
Well, because the figures that I've sent to you today just refer to residential, but the ones over the larger commercial developments would fall into the top category of residential over 51 because of the site size. So therefore, the advice would, as a pre-application inquiry, would cost 1,323, with any subsequent advice with a follow-on fee of 661.
Sorry, thank you. That's all I want to know, Neville. Thank you.
But Councillor Morby, you give them advice for free and tell them not to bother. But anyway, if there's any other members, have we got any other questions? We've got a chair of planning here. I'm sure he's got something to say, have you not? Councillor Brockbank.
Not really, because we don't get involved. Well, chair of planning doesn't get involved in fees and charges.
No.
But it is worth noting that people do pay for their application anyway, in addition to any pre-application advice. And of course, and I quote, that pre-application advice is no guarantee that the application will be approved. So, people can be paying out money and still not get the application approved.
No, that's fair enough. I think it's a couple of it. And we've got Councillor Soloway and Councillor Shuttleworth. If you'd like to unmute yourself, Councillor Soloway, please.
Yeah, just a point about fees and charges. We've had this before on other fees and charges, particularly with licensing and like sort of water inspection things. there's some fairly tight legislation about it from my memory, that we can't be seen to be overcharging, and there have been some authorities that have been really taken to task by potentially overcharging on it. So we do, whereas we should certainly cover our costs, we have to be, we really do have to justify it, certainly in terms, and I'm sure that applies to these. It certainly applies to licensing fees. It certainly applies to other fees and charges. We do have a remit to actually keep an eye on it and make sure that we're not overcharging. In some ways, I'd like us to be able to overcharge on it, but often legislation does curtail us.
Chairman, if I could just come back on that one. Obviously, the fees for planning applications are set by central government. I've got no control over that. That is nationally bound legislative costs. What we've got with the pre-application inquiry is left down to the individual council to make their own judgment about what they think the cost of their service is going to be. And when you think about what the cost of a planning application for 50 houses or more than 50 houses is heading towards a maximum fee that I don't instantly have to hand, unless I can quickly find it here. A pre-application inquiry with a fee of £2,000 and the cost of land to build 50 houses on it, and the cost of architects' fees at 12% of the development costs, £2,000 is a drop in the ocean. And if it means that we would be advising the applicant, don't waste your maximum fee, because it would be potentially a maximum fee. £2,000 is I would say would be money well spent, because the amount of time that it would take us to do the research, the history, do whatever consultations are necessary, £2,000 would just cover costs. But you know, I can review that and do some further research.
Right. I mean, I think one point I would make on this issue about fees and charges is to remember what any professional within the process of developing a property or a site is going to charge, whether it be the solicitor that does the conveyancing, or it's the architect or what have you. You know, they're all going to charge some quite substantial amounts of money based on a minimum charge. So, you know, I think, as you quite rightly say, Neville, on a bigger site, we're talking, you know, relatively small potatoes, really. And if we're looking at a private individual's application, you know, 25 quid wouldn't really get, I wouldn't even get your dental checkup, let alone some sort of sound planning advice on an application that might involve spending, you know, tens of thousands of pounds. So I think, you know, we've got to sort of bear in mind the context of this. Anyway, any other members got any comments that they'd like to make or questions they'd like to ask?
Chairman, you did mention my name. I had a raised hand. I don't know whether it's still raised or not.
Oh, yeah. Councillor Shuttleworth, yeah.
Yeah. Building control falling within the overall umbrella of development control. Am I right in thinking that fees payable in respect of the council's building control service are prescribed by statute? Or is it a discretionary level that is fixed by the council themselves?
Chairman, I don't actually have control of the building control remit. That's David Smurthwaite who holds that. But just to answer the question, there is a base fee that is there, but potentially I think there is an element of negotiation, because if we can negotiate an appropriate fee and be 5% less than the private sector would do, let's drop the fee by 5% and take the money, rather than let it go into the private sector's hands, because, you know, now that building control has been partially privatised, obviously the building inspectors out there working in the private sector are wanting to effectively go through the tendering process. So as far as I'm aware, there is some scope for negotiation on the fees, but there's a base level that is set, but there is, I believe, some element of negotiation.
Thank you. Well, is that something, Chairman, that we could consider at an early future date? Make sure we do optimise the income from development control.
In respect of us getting involved in that, you mean, or just to
a recommendation from this committee, or whichever Mr. Smurthwaite's department, whichever section is able to do a bit of research and try and just undercut the private sector. Always assuming, that is, that we're fully staffed.
I mean, I'm getting the impression that, you know, with a fair wind behind us, Neville's keen to look at this. Would that be a fair assessment, Neville?
I'll certainly raise it with David, because at the moment we lost 2 building control officers. There was only 3 of them, and we lost 1 in July moving authorities and 1 retirement in August. So we've got the limited number of building control staff at the moment, and we're relying on agency support at this point in time. But I'll certainly raise it with David, and you know, we can report back to select committee in due course.
Yeah, it might help, Chairman. I'm not wishing to steer Mr. Watson or Mr. Smurthwaite in this respect, but there is an organisation of, I think, 5 or possibly 6 other district councils in North Yorkshire that operate under the umbrella of what's known as the Building Control Consortium. Is that right, Neville?
I think there is going to be a move to review how building control across North Yorkshire is done, and you will end up with combined a central pool, albeit that you'll have to work. But it's certainly something that I think there is discussions underway to think, is building control to be centralised under one umbrella of North Yorkshire, albeit that they will be working with different officers, but it's shared services in a way. It's not passing the buck, it's shared services, because I think across North Yorkshire, building control are under pressure from the private sector, and therefore are looking collectively to say, how can we either recover the position where we had monopoly control until privatisation, or whatever happens in the future. So yeah, there are moves afoot, but I'll raise that with David.
And this was the point I was leading on to consult with them to see what level of fees they were charging, and to try and equate with that, so we're all on a level playing field and be hopefully competitive against the private sector.
Yeah, I think it's a fair assessment that there's a piece of work going to be going on. So I think we could just leave it at there. I mean, obviously, it's, you know, to lose 1 building control officer is unfortunate. To lose 2 is just downright clumsy, really. But there you go. Obviously, we're looking to recover that position, I assume, with these posts. But yeah, I think as Councillor Shuttle has made the point, and Neville's accepted it at this moment in time, I think that should be suffice. Obviously, you know, you're passing on the comments to the head of service. So, right, Councillor Brockbank.
Yes, it's just to say really that wherever we can cover costs, not necessarily make a profit. I know we're not allowed to make a profit for some things, but where we can cover costs, then certainly I'd welcome that initiative from well, not just from the planning manager, but from all sections really of the council.
Anybody else got anything further to say or questions to ask, or are we going to let Neville go?
Councillor Staley, if I could just come in just very quickly. I don't want to prolong things any further, but just in terms of the recommendation tracking template, it would seem to me that recommendation 3 has been achieved. That's the sending out the weekly list of planning applications to Parish Council electronically. So tick that one off. I would say recommendations 1, 2, and 4. This is just a suggested status. Progress made acceptable, continue monitoring. So we'll keep monitoring it. We'll bring it back later in the year with the other recommendations. But that would be a suggested status of recommendations if members are happy with that.
Yeah, I think that seems a reasonable assessment, unless any of the members have got a view to the contrary. Not seeing any virtual hands. Councillor Shuttleworth? Would that meet with your approval? Unmute yourself.
Sorry, yes, by all means, Chairman. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I know you've been keen to see these points picked up, but yes, thank you, Guy. I think that's a good suggestion. So, yeah, I think at that we will draw this item to a close. Thank you for your time and patience there, Neville. Much appreciated once again. And we'll move on to item 7, our work schedule.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Staveley. So the work schedule's been updated to reflect the discussions and conversations that we had at the July Select Committee meeting. So you've got an updated schedule before you now. I suppose the only thing to highlight would be the next meeting of Select Committee, 28th of October 2020. We're going to start looking at building control, our review of building control. So if any members have any thoughts about any specific areas that we want to focus on, information that we wish to receive, or we want to request members to officers to provide us with, want to let either myself or Hannah know, and we can sort of feed that into the process, ready for the next meeting in October. That's all, Chair.
Right, Councillor Shuttleworth, you'll be chairing this working group, won't you? So you wanting to speak?
Yes, Chairman. In view of what we've just been told about a mass exodus of building control officers, might it just be a touch premature to consider things in October? Just wait until hopefully we do have a full complement of staff.
I don't know what other members think. I mean, I'm inclined to start. I think it will be worthwhile starting this piece of work so we can just try and get an idea of where we need to be or should be with building control. I would take a guess that by the end of October, which is going to be, you know, a month and a half off now. Sorry?
6 weeks.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I would hope we'd have the planning department would have a better idea where they're at with things, and then we can start to look at it. I don't know. Well, any other members got a view on this? Don't all speak at once, will you? No. Everybody happy to carry on with the 28th of October? Being chair, you know, you're going to chair this, Brian. Oh, right, Councillor Hull. I've got to take her at last. Right, Councillor Hull, unmute yourself.
Can I just, I've been relatively new to Select. Do we all come along to all the working groups, or do we get identified to a working group?
All members are considered to be part of the working group unless they exempt themselves.
Even though, particularly in my case, not a lot of experience in planning, so I don't think I'd be much use.
No, there's no excuse. Get yourself there. That's not good enough.
Fair enough. Just asking, just seeking clarification. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, consider yourself clarified. Right. So, I mean, as I say, I don't know. Councillor Shuttleworth. Oh, I've got Councillor Brockbank. Would you like to speak?
Yes, the question really, Chair. I've just joined Select, and so I don't know what the terms of reference are for this for this particular working group. could somebody send me the terms of reference, please? What I don't know as well is why has Select selected to discuss building control?
Well, I've got Councillor Solomon, so I'll just get Councillor Solomon, then we'll roll these together.
I mean, my own view is I think we should have this meeting as it's programmed, because we have been calling for a working group on this, and we have actually looked at planning services and we've looked at enforcement before. Select Committee have been very proactive on this. Just to answer Councillor Brockband's question, the directive came from the members of Select Committee doing their role of being a scrutiny committee, saying we need to look at these different areas of our service delivery. So it's been driven by this committee and individual members on this committee who've had very strong views about it, including Brian, including Chris, and various other people who've said we need to look at this particular aspect of building control. So that's where it's driven from. And I know there is some uncertainty over staff, uncertainty over absolutely everything at the moment. And I think that we've, in a way, you've got to kind of strike while the iron's hot. Even if this working group just makes preliminary work, I think it would be very useful. I would like to see it start soon, and I don't really see any reason to delay it, really. Otherwise, it pushes things on to other meetings. This sort of standalone group.
Right, Councillor Shuttleworth, do you want to come back? Do you want to give me your opinion on that comment?
Yeah, I'm happy to go with the end of October. It was just under the circumstances as to what other members thought. I mean, it's essentially a theoretical assessment as to what building control does or should do, and one of the particular concerns I had was the competitive nature of the council's service against the private sector, and how the council can optimise its revenue from that service.
I mean, perhaps the terms of reference that we're going to be pulling forward for this working group do need to include how the service is delivered, perhaps, bearing in mind the suggestion of this shared service model that's being mooted. Would that be a reasonable suggestion, do you think?
Yeah, by all means. It's something that I think we should be aware of the broader aspects and future possibilities. Yeah.
Right, well, that's agreed then. 28th of October it is. Let's get cracked on. I think that makes sense, members. If there's no thumbs, I don't think there is a thumbs down, is there? But anyway, we'll take that as read. So, yeah, Guy, I don't think there's anything else really at this moment in time for the work programme that we need to discuss, is there?
No, that was the key one, the building control. I think the next meeting after that, without looking at my agenda pack, I think is the impact of COVID-19 on council services. And I think that really would be a little bit too early to be brought before the October meeting. So I think my suggestion that you go ahead with the building control working group in October is probably a good one. Just in terms of information gathering and an assessment of the main issues, I think will prove really useful to you.
Yeah, no. There is obviously changes afoot, and I think it's a timely decision to sort of have a look at building control. So, agenda item 7 done. Agenda item 8. Any other items which the chairman decides are urgent? Oh, that's me, isn't it? Right.
Sorry, I got my hand up on the last item. Sorry.
Oh, well, Andy, I didn't spot you there.
Sorry, I can understand not after such a long council. Basically, I'm going to have another go at trying to persuade people of a work item that I think we should have in the future, which is this issue of how much we're spending on consultants and lawyers, and it's very much not geared at any specific situation. I want to actually have us a report that shows how much has gone out on each occasion where we commissioned an external service, what it's for, what we've got out of it. Because I think as we get more and more broke, as the financial pressures increase, we really have got to look hard at the discretionary spending we make. And I think this committee would be very well placed to just look down a list and say, we spent X amount on that, Y amount on that, Z amount on that. Was it good value? Was it what we should be doing? Can we control it better? Those kind of questions, you know, rather than is any individual, you know, appropriate to employ or not. That's basically what I was trying to get.
I think my instinct is that it's very, very broad brushes this in terms of what we're looking at, because obviously we get in subcontractors, as we're sort of referring to them, in many different aspects of the council's work for many different reasons. Some because we just don't have the skill sets within the council, some because we've just got a shortage of a vacancy that hasn't been filled. I'm thinking, really, is it really? I mean, Wendy, Councillor Hull's chair of audit, would this be something that audit would initially take a view on? Do you think? From you, talk, Wendy.
Yeah, I'm not uncomfortable with that, actually, David. I think that's a very good idea, because, you know, these are kind of one-off. They're not, if you like, broad. I mean, if something comes out of it that would need referring to Select, then fine. I think actually looking at the numbers and the details would be appropriate to have a quick look at, and then if there's something in it, then bring it back here.
I think, yeah, I think that would certainly be my instinct. As I say, I mean, sat on audit and governance for some time before. I think that would seem a logical way forward. Councillor Morby.
Yes, I have concerns about where we have statutory consultees, and then we employ somebody to look at what, how can I put it? I'll give an example now, and Linda knows what I'm going to say.
Chris, just remember, if it's mentioning individual officers, or individual contractors, you have to be a little bit careful. It is a public meeting, so please just maybe refer to posts and things rather than individuals by name. If you
I aren't going to mention individuals by name. But for example, on one planning instance, we had one statutory consultee who gave their opinion, and then we employed our own consultee to give an opinion. I think things like that need looking at. But that's just a general one that I've come across. And as I say, Linda knows about that, and I've got sort of an explanation. But I think, yes, it could be a good thing to look at.
I'll support that.
Yeah, Councillor Brockbank.
We have a peer review coming up. Dates in very shortly, and maybe that's maybe we should wait for the results of the peer review on planning services before we make a decision as to whether or not we're going to go ahead with that.
Yeah, I think members had proposed that we ask, you know, we can formally ask the chair of audit and governance to sort of take a view on this, and then be led by the deliberations of the audit and governance committee. Clearly, by that stage, if there is something that's felt it needs to be looked at further, we will have the peer review as well in place, which might help inform any potential working group. I've got Councillor Brown, then I've got Councillor Hull.
Just to try and help, I buy the idea that maybe the first thing is to go down the audit route, but what I'd ask is, could the report coming back to audit group be copied to us so we can have a view on whether there are any scrutiny issues that are more appropriate for our committee? Because I think basically what I'm trying to find, I think an internal audit report into our use of consultants and that kind of stuff could be a very, very valuable tool, and certainly an understanding of how that's sat in comparison with other authorities and that kind of thing could be very valuable. But there are points that people like Councillor Morby might look at a different eye than an audit committee would look at. And so I think it'd be useful if we were to have a sight of that report and decided whether there are any issues we wish to pick up after it came in. Does that make sense?
I mean, is it the finances that's bothering you, or is it the advice that we're getting? Is that
it's the fact that I don't have a feel for whether we spent $500,000 last year or 10,000. Yeah, and what we spent it on, and which ones were incredibly expensive, which ones were incredibly cheap, whether this year was particularly difficult. Because, yeah, and sometimes there might be a one-off, like a particular planning thing which required enormous amounts of legal advice, where we might all say, well, that's a big hole, but we understand why it's a big hole. I just think we, as a scrutiny committee and audit together, ought to be understanding how far we are spending money that is discretionary, whether we want it tighter controlled, whether we're getting value for money, whether the service is in any areas being sloppily commissioned, that kind of thing. And an internal audit report on it that we had a sight of would be the best way of kicking it off.
Yeah, well, let's just hear from the chair of audit and governance.
Right, can I come in now? Well, first of all, my first put my hand up to say that I'd like to second Councillor Staveley's recommendation there for the minutes. But can I also reassure Councillor Brown that certainly any time any expenditure is not part and parcel of a prescribed tendering approach, and obviously it's different levels of spend without going into all the detail that does come back to audit committee anyway. So I can assure you we certainly don't regularly see the sort of stuff you're referring to. But I agree, that's the whole point of having these different committees look at different ways, and they should interrelate. So very happy to support the recommendation, and I know obviously Hannah, you look after the two committees, so I think we can dovetail that together quite quickly. Okay.
Yeah, so Hannah, if you'd like to email yourself and the chair of audit, that'd be great. Right, so any other comments on that point? I saw Councillor Shuttleworth briefly show a hand, or was that a mistake?
Go on then, now you've in a way invited me to say something. I was also going to further Councillor Brown's comments to say that in this particular case, in addition to a statutory consultee, the council employed its own consultee, and this was done 4 times between each consultee. Each time opinions were different, which quite frankly, when you have a statutory consultee, then the council employs its own consultee for an opinion against a statutory consultee. It seems to me to be a little bit, I'm trying to think of a word to describe it somehow, but I'm sure you can sense what I'm driving at.
I think the difficulty is, Councillor Shuttleworth, expert opinion is always the opinion of the individual expert, and not all experts agree. So that you do get this sort of thing come up. But certainly, I think the points that you're making are not going unnoticed by Councillor Hull. Will no doubt be looking at this when audit and governance take a view on this issue initially, and then we'll see what comes back from them and go forward from there if members are in agreement. But yeah, as I say, I can see your frustrations, Councillor Shuttleworth, so I don't disagree. But yeah, that's I think we've got a resolution there that satisfies everybody. I'm guessing Councillor Morby's head is in his hands because we've mentioned that planning application again. But anyhow, right. So back to where I was. Yes. Any other items? I don't think there is at this time. Date and time of the next meeting, which we've discussed, we're looking at 6:30, 28th of October. Is that agreeable to everybody?
Mm-hmm.
Right. Well, at that, I will declare the meeting closed. Thank you very much for your attendance. Apologies for my brief disappearance, so to speak, when my clockwork internet seems to go very clockwork. But anyway, and thank you all, and we'll speak to you all soon.
Yeah, thank you, Chair.